You know what's funny? Americans will pay $1 million for a house in the mountains because it's peaceful and beautiful, away from the chaos of cities. And then every summer they spend 3 months checking fire maps, wearing N95 masks because the air quality is worse than Beijing, and having their phones blow up with evacuation alerts. And when the insurance company sends them a letter saying we're not covering you anymore, good luck, they act shocked. Like they didn't buy a house in a forest that burns every few years. Welcome to mountain living in the 2020s, where your dream home comes with an asterisk that says may spontaneously combust during fire season, which is now 8 months long. Climate change is making wildfires worse. That's not controversial. That's just physics and data. Fire seasons are longer. Fires are bigger. And mountain towns that used to burn once a generation are now burning every few years. Some have burned multiple times. Some are just waiting for their turn. And here's the thing. The market is starting to notice. Property values in fire-prone areas are stagnating or falling. Insurance is vanishing or getting insanely expensive. And people who thought they were making smart real estate investments are discovering they bought houses in disaster zones. So today we're going through 18 mountain towns where climate change is actively destroying property values. Some of these places have already burned. Some are about to. And all of them are facing an existential crisis about whether it's even viable to live there long term. This isn't hypothetical. This is happening right now. Let's get into it. Here's what's happening and why it matters. Wildfires are getting worse. Not might get worse, are getting worse. Fire seasons used to be a few months. Now they're basically spring through fall. Fires used to be manageable. Now they're megafires that burn hundreds of thousands of acres and create their own weather systems. The reasons are pretty simple. Hotter temperatures dry out vegetation. Drought makes it worse. A century of fire suppression created massive fuel loads in forests. And climate change is making all of it more extreme. Mountain towns are particularly vulnerable because they're literally built in forests. The thing that makes them beautiful is also what burns. And a lot of these towns were built during times when fire risk wasn't as severe, or wasn't well understood. People built million-dollar homes right up against wildland with no defensible space, because the views were amazing. Now those amazing views come with the very real possibility of watching your house burn down. And even if your house doesn't burn, you're dealing with smoke that makes the air unbreathable, evacuation orders that disrupt your life, and the constant anxiety of living in a fire zone. Insurance companies figured this out before homeowners did. They looked at the data and decided mountain fire zones are too risky. So they're either leaving entirely or charging premiums so high that owning a home becomes unaffordable. When insurance goes away or becomes prohibitively expensive, property values follow, because banks won't give mortgages without insurance, and buyers won't pay premium prices to live somewhere that might burn down and can't be insured. The towns on this list are all experiencing this in various stages. Some have already burned and are rebuilding in the same fire zone. Some haven't burned yet, but everyone knows it's coming. And some are watching their property values crater as insurance companies bail and buyers realize the risk. This is climate change translated into real estate economics. And it's brutal. Number 18. Boulder, Colorado. Starting with a controversial one because people love Boulder and don't want to hear that it's in trouble. Boulder is surrounded by wildland. The 2021 Marshall Fire burned neighborhoods in Louisville and Superior right next to Boulder. 1,000 homes gone. In winter. That's not supposed to happen. Insurance in Boulder County is getting expensive and harder to find. Property values in fire-prone areas are softening. And everyone's aware that what happened to Louisville could happen to them. Boulder is wealthy enough to adapt. They're doing mitigation. Building codes are stricter, but they can't change the fundamental fact that the city is in a high fire risk area that's getting worse. Boulder thought being progressive would protect it from climate change. Physics doesn't care about your politics. Number 17. Bend, Oregon. Bend boomed during COVID because everyone wanted mountain living. Now they're learning what mountain living actually means. Bend is in central Oregon, surrounded by dry ponderosa pine forests. Fire risk is high and increasing. The 2021 fires got close. The 2023 fires got closer. Everyone knows it's just a matter of time. Insurance is getting harder to find. Rates are spiking, and property values are starting to reflect the risk. Homes that sold for huge premiums during the pandemic boom are sitting on the market now. Bend is great if you like beer and skiing. Less great if you like breathing clean air in summer or sleeping through the night without evacuation anxiety. Bend is realizing that being a trendy mountain town doesn't mean you're safe from fire. Number 16. Taos, New Mexico. Taos has always been artsy and beautiful and remote. Now it's artsy and beautiful and burning. New Mexico is in a mega drought. Fire seasons are brutal. The Hermit's Peak, Calf Canyon fire in 2020 to burn over 300,000 acres. In northern New Mexico, Taos got lucky, but fires in the area keep getting bigger. Insurance is a nightmare in northern New Mexico now. Property values are stagnating, and people are starting to question whether living in a desert that catches fire regularly is sustainable. Taos has incredible culture and stunning landscapes. It also has air quality that makes you cough and evacuation routes that get jammed instantly. Taos is where art meets apocalyptic fire conditions. Number 15. Whitefish, Montana. Montana mountain towns are gorgeous. They're also increasingly on fire. Whitefish is near Glacier National Park. Beautiful, expensive, and surrounded by forests that burn. The 2003 fires, the 2017 fires, the 2021 fires. Smoke season is now just part of summer. Insurance companies are pulling out of Montana fire zones. Property values are still high because Montana is hot right now, but the cracks are showing. Buyers are asking more questions about fire risk. Whitefish is Yellowstone adjacent with all the mountain beauty you'd want. Until summer when the sky turns orange and breathing outside is like smoking a pack of cigarettes. Whitefish is where paradise meets particulate matter. Number 14. Idlewild, California. Idlewild is a cute mountain town in Southern California. It's also a fire trap waiting to happen. Idlewild is surrounded by dense forest and has limited evacuation routes. It's been threatened multiple times. In 2013, the mountain fire got close. In 2018, the Cranston fire got closer. Everyone in Idlewild knows their turn is coming. Insurance is increasingly unavailable. Property values are down, and people are quietly leaving because living under constant fire threat isn't actually relaxing. Idlewild has great cabins and charming vibes. It also has one road out and forests so thick that fire suppression is nearly impossible. Idlewild is adorable until you realize you're in a bowl of kindling. With one exit. Number 13. Breckenridge, Colorado. Breckenridge is a ski town. Expensive, trendy, and increasingly at risk. Colorado is getting drier and hotter. Fire seasons are longer. Breck is surrounded by forest. Insurance hasn't become catastrophic yet, but it's heading that way. Property values are still high because skiing is popular, but buyers are getting nervous. Breckenridge is where rich people pay $3 million for a condo and then can't breathe outside. 3 months a year. Breck is peak mountain lifestyle until fire season reminds you that mountains burn. Number 12. Truckee, Lake Tahoe, California, Nevada. Tahoe is iconic. It's also a tinderbox. The Caldor fire in 2021 came within miles of South Lake Tahoe. 50,000 people evacuated. The entire basin was covered in smoke. Everyone in Tahoe knows how close they came. Insurance is becoming a nightmare around the lake. Some areas are nearly uninsurable. Property values are wobbling, and the constant threat of fire is making people rethink whether living in paradise is worth the anxiety. Tahoe is stunning. Crystal water, mountain peaks. It's also surrounded by forest that hasn't burned in over a century and is absolutely loaded with fuel. Tahoe is where you pay $1 million to live in constant fear of the next Caldor fire. Number 11. Estes Park, Colorado. Estes Park is the gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park. Beautiful. Touristy, and increasingly risky. The 2020 Cameron Peak and East Troublesome fires were the largest in Colorado history. Estes Park was threatened. Evacuations happened, and everyone realized that fire risk is real even in Colorado's flagship mountain town. Insurance is getting expensive. Property values are still decent because tourism is strong, but long-term residents are worried. The town's economy depends on people wanting to visit and live there. Fire changes that calculus. Estes Park is where you go to see elk and mountains, and lately, to see smoke and evacuate. Estes Park is charming until you remember it's a mountain town in an era of megafires. Number 10. Big Bear, California. Big Bear is a weekend getaway for Southern Californians. It's close to LA, has a lake, and feels like a mountain escape. It's also a fire zone. Big Bear has been threatened by fires repeatedly. The 2020 El Dorado fire, the 2021 fires, the 2022 fires. Every summer, people in Big Bear watch the fire maps and hope it's not their turn. Insurance is a disaster. Literally, getting coverage is nearly impossible. Property values are declining, and rental income is down because people don't want to book vacation homes in fire zones. Big Bear is a fun weekend trip. Less fun when your phone goes off at midnight with an evacuation order. Big Bear is where LA people go to relax until they spend the whole time checking fire updates. Number 9. Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Jackson Hole is where billionaires buy ranches and pretend to be cowboys. It's also getting smokier every year. Wyoming has had massive fires in recent years. Jackson itself hasn't burned, but the Teton area gets smoke from fires in Idaho, Montana, Oregon. Summer air quality is increasingly terrible. Insurance isn't as bad as California yet, but it's trending that direction. Property values are still insane because Jackson is a status symbol, but smoke is making summers less appealing. Jackson Hole is where the ultra-wealthy go to escape, only to find they can't escape climate change. Jackson is proof that money can't buy clean air. Number 8. Santa Fe, New Mexico. Santa Fe is artsy and expensive and trying to ignore its fire problem. New Mexico is burning regularly. The fires around Santa Fe in recent years have been massive. The Hermit's Peak, Calf Canyon fire was a disaster, and Santa Fe is sitting in a landscape that's getting drier and more fire-prone. Insurance is getting harder to find and more expensive. Property values are holding for now because Santa Fe has strong cultural appeal, but the trend is concerning. Santa Fe is where artists and retirees go for the culture and climate. Except the climate is now constant fire threat. Santa Fe is beautiful until you realize it's in a desert that's becoming a furnace. Number 7. Flagstaff, Arizona. Flagstaff is the mountain town in Arizona. It's surrounded by ponderosa pine forest, and ponderosa pine burns really well. The 2010 Schultz fire, the 2019 Museum fire, the constant threat of something bigger. Flagstaff is a fire waiting to happen. The forests are overgrown with decades of fuel buildup. One lightning strike and it's over. Insurance is becoming a crisis. Property values are stagnating, and people are starting to leave because living under constant fire threat isn't worth it. Flagstaff is where you go to escape Arizona heat. Except now you're escaping heat only to live in a fire zone. Flagstaff is nice until you realize you're in a forest that's one spark away from catastrophe. Number 6. Asheville, North Carolina. Wait, North Carolina on a wildfire list? Yes. Climate change is making even the humid East vulnerable. The 2016 wildfires around Asheville were shocking. Gatlinburg burned. Areas around Asheville burned. Everyone thought the East was safe from major fires. They were wrong. Insurance is starting to reflect the new reality. Property values are still strong because Asheville is trendy, but fire risk is becoming part of the conversation. Asheville is where people move for the culture and the mountains, not expecting to deal with West Coast-style fire problems. Asheville is realizing that forest fires aren't just a Western issue anymore. Number 5. Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Gatlinburg literally burned in 2016. 14 people died, thousands of structures destroyed, and people rebuilt in the exact same fire zone. Gatlinburg's economy depends on tourism, the Smoky Mountains, Dollywood, so they rebuilt fast and tried to move on. But the fire risk hasn't gone away. It's arguably worse now. Insurance is expensive and hard to get. Property values recovered after the fire, but the long-term trend is concerning, and tourists are starting to ask if it's safe. Gatlinburg is a tourist town that burned down and rebuilt like nothing happened. Except something did happen, and it could happen again. Gatlinburg is where southern hospitality meets wildfire amnesia. Number 4. South Lake Tahoe, California. South Lake Tahoe is more vulnerable than the rest of the basin because of how it's situated. The Gatlinburg fire in 2021 came terrifyingly close. The entire town evacuated. 50,000 people fled. The fire was stopped just short of the city, but it was pure luck and firefighting heroics. Insurance is nearly impossible to get now. Property values are dropping, and residents are selling because living there means constant anxiety. South Lake Tahoe is one of the most beautiful places in America. It's also one bad fire season away from non-existing. South Lake is paradise with an expiration date. Number 3. Ruidoso, New Mexico. Ruidoso is a mountain resort town in southern New Mexico, and it's burning. The 2012 Little Bear Fire destroyed hundreds of homes. Recent fires have threatened the town again, and the South Fork Fire in 2024 devastated the area. Ruidoso keeps burning and keeps rebuilding, and everyone knows it's just going to burn again. Insurance is catastrophic. Many properties are uninsurable. Property values are plummeting, and people are leaving because you can only rebuild so many times. Ruidoso is where New Mexicans and Texans go for mountain escape, except the escape keeps catching fire. Ruidoso is the definition of a town that refuses to accept its fire reality. Number 2. Grassy Valley, Nevada City, California. The Sierra Nevada foothills are gorgeous. They're also a continuous fire zone. The Camp Fire burned paradise, but the entire region is vulnerable. Grass Valley and Nevada City have been threatened repeatedly. Everyone there lives with the knowledge that they could be next. Insurance is vanishing. Property values are dropping significantly, and people are quietly selling and leaving because the risk is too high. Grass Valley and Nevada City are charming historic towns. They're also sitting in a landscape that wants to burn. These towns are paradise until you check the fire maps. Number 1. Paradise, California. At number 1, the town that literally burned down and became the symbol of wildfire disaster, we have Paradise. The Camp Fire in 2018 killed 85 people and destroyed the town. 18,000 structures gone. It was the deadliest wildfire in California history. Paradise is rebuilding. Some people moved back, but it's rebuilding in the same fire zone. Insurance is nearly impossible to get. Property values are a fraction of what they were, and everyone knows it could happen again. Paradise is the clearest example of what happens when people refuse to accept climate reality. They rebuild in a place that burned catastrophically, and it could burn again. Paradise wasn't paradise. It was a warning, and we're ignoring it. So what does all this actually mean? First, climate change is making mountain living increasingly untenable in many places, not all, but many. Fire seasons are longer and worse, and they're not getting better. Second, insurance is the canary in the coal mine. When insurance companies flee, that's the market saying the risk is too high. And when insurance goes away, property values follow, because banks won't lend and buyers won't buy. Third, people are bad at assessing long-term risk. We see a beautiful mountain town and buy a house. We don't think about the fact that it hasn't burned in 50 years, because fire suppression has been keeping it from burning. And when suppression fails, as it increasingly does, the accumulated fuel makes the fire catastrophic. Fourth, rebuilding in fire zones is questionable at best and insane at worst. Paradise rebuild. Gatlinburg rebuild. Ruidoso keeps rebuilding. At some point you have to ask if it makes sense to keep rebuilding in places that will burn again. And fifth, this is only going to get worse. Climate change isn't reversing anytime soon. Fire seasons will keep getting longer and worse, and more mountain towns will face the choice between adapting, declining, or dying. So there you have it. 18 mountain towns where climate change is actively destroying property values and making life increasingly difficult. Some of these towns will adapt. Better building codes, aggressive forest management, community fire plans. Some will decline as people leave and property values fall. And some will burn, rebuild, and burn again until people finally give up. The mountain living dream isn't dead everywhere, but it's dying in a lot of places, or at least transforming into something less dreamy and more stressful. If you own property in a fire zone, you're facing some hard choices. Hold on and hope fire mitigation works. Sell before the market realizes how bad things are. Or just accept that you're gambling every fire season. And if you're thinking about buying in a mountain town, do your research. Check fire history. Check insurance availability and cost. Check evacuation routes. And ask yourself if the lifestyle is worth the risk. Because increasingly, for a lot of people, the answer is no. So here's my question for you. If you had a house in one of these towns, would you sell? Or would you stay and hope for the best? And at what point does the risk become unacceptable? Drop a comment. Let me know, because this is one of the most fascinating and terrifying intersections of climate change and real estate economics. And if you found this depressing but informative, maybe subscribe. We do housing markets, climate realities, and economic absurdities. Someone has to talk about the stuff everyone else ignores. Might as well be me.